Hello and welcome to part two of our two-part session on the prevention of workplace harassment and violence, civility, respect, and communication. My name is Sonia Tonkovich. I am the manager of the Public Health Partnership here at CCHS. I am an advocate of healthy workplaces. I'm also a certified health and safety professional with extensive workplace experience. Joining me today is Sue Freeman, Outreach Program Manager and advocate of healthy workplace programs with a background in workplace mental health. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks, Sonia.
I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge that CCHS is situated on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe on territory covered by the Upper Canada Treaties within lands protected by the Dish-One-Spoon Wampum Agreement. In the agreement, the dish represents the territory and a single spoon represents that the people are to share the resources of the land, taking only what they need. We also acknowledge that the legacy of colonialism continues to impact Indigenous peoples today. We commit to seeking a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one grounded in honor and deep respect. Thank you. Also, a content warning. It is important to note harassment and violence affects the lives of many workers in Canada. This content may be difficult or upsetting for some learners. We encourage you to care for your safety and your well-being and to take breaks as needed. Please ask any questions you have in the question and answer section. The Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety is Canada's national resource for the advancement of workplace health and safety. For over 40 years, CCHS has promoted the physical and psychological health, safety, and total well-being of workers. We do this by collaborating and engaging with stakeholders and providing information, education, tools, and solutions that will help prevent work-related injury and illness to improve the lives of workers. CCHS is a federal departmental corporation reporting to the Parliament of Canada through the Minister of Labour. And it is governed by a council of governors representing governments, federal, provincial, and territorial, employers and workers. And this is a structure that enables us to provide a balanced, impartial approach.
For those of you joining us again from session 1, these next few slides are a recap on the reporting of an occurrence and steps beyond that, as all workplaces have a duty to report incidents of harassment or violence. Every workplace is required to have a process for reporting, recording, and investigating occurrences. All occurrences, actions, conduct, or comments must be reported, as well as follow through using the process outlined in the regulations. Reflecting on the importance of reporting, consider how concerns that are left unreported cannot be addressed, and unfortunately the situation may continue or worsen as such incidents are not known to go away on their own without intervention. As another important point, there are federal regulations that outline the process for federally regulated workplaces to follow through to achieve an outcome or resolution that can be implemented for the safety, health, and well-being of all the people affected. If you are not federally regulated, review your own jurisdiction's harassment and violence legislation and regulations for specific information and guidance. If the notice of occurrence itself does not contain all the information required by Section 16 of the regulations, the principal party or witness should be given the opportunity to provide the missing information. Encourage the person to provide as much detail as they can. So from Section 16 of the regulations, it states, content of notice. Notice of an occurrence must contain the following information: the name of the principal party and the responding party if known, the date of the occurrence, and a detailed description of the occurrence. However, if the notice does not contain sufficient information to allow the identity of the principal party to be determined, an employer is not required to take further action to resolve the occurrence and may therefore deem the occurrence resolved. There are many steps past the notice of occurrence being filed, which starts in Section 14 and goes through to Section 19 of the federal regulations. In regulation sections 20 to 30, you can find steps to take for the initial review, plus negotiated resolution, conciliation, and investigation requirements. The person experiencing harassment and violence is not the only one who can report an occurrence. Sometimes the person experiencing harassment and violence may not recognize that the situation that they are involved in meets the definition of workplace harassment and violence. Sometimes they may be embarrassed or worried about what might happen next. The key message here is reporting done by the principal party or witness. The witness can also be anonymous. There is no time limit in the regulations for a current employee to submit a notice of occurrence of harassment and violence to the designated recipient. However, lapse of time may impact the employer's ability to properly assess the situation. Please note from the regulations, to quote, managers need to encourage employees to submit their notice as soon as they are able to. This is in Section 15. Exclusions. Note there are 3 exclusions that all must be in place for this requirement to provide notice, that they do not have to provide notice. If the responding party is not an employer or the employee, if the exposure is considered part of the person's normal conditions of work, and if the employer has taken measures to address that specific workplace harassment and violence, no notice should be provided. Now, typically, this could be your RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or correctional officers in terms of federally regulated. The date starts when the notice is filed, not the actual day the event happened. It is important for managers to not only know but understand the really short timeline these regulations require and how long the designated recipient has to respond. Contacting the principal party will inform them that a notice of occurrence has been reported. There may be situations in which the principal party is not aware that a witness filed a notice of occurrence involving them. Being represented. A principal and responding party may be represented during the resolution process. The regulations do not specify who the representative may be, but it can include a union representative, a colleague, a spouse or partner, a family member, or a friend.
Please take a moment to read the statements on the screen and consider how your workplace needs to have tools and resources ready to help provide emotional support when receiving a report from someone reporting an occurrence. Management also needs to support a team during an investigation and resolution process. Management also needs a support team during an investigation and resolution process. Consider what those supports may be, including access to your employee assistance services or related community supports. It's also really important to outline for the people affected what roles and responsibilities managers have when an incident occurs or is reported, and how managers can continue to support all who have been affected positively. Let's move on, and we're going to discuss how the Canadian human rights are part and parcel of the workplace harassment and violence. From the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and the purpose of the Commission is to protect the core principle of equal opportunity and promote a vision of an inclusive society free from discrimination. Harassment is a form of discrimination. It includes any unwanted physical or verbal behavior that offends or humiliates you. Generally, harassment is a behavior that persists over time. Serious one-time incidents can also sometimes be considered harassment. Harassment also includes unwelcome remarks or jokes about your race, religion, sex, age, disability, or any other of the grounds of discrimination. It threatens or intimidates you because of your race, religion, sex, age, disability, or any other of the grounds for discrimination. It also makes unwelcome physical contact with you, such as touching, patting, or pinching. Statistics Canada report from December 2018 for insights on Canadian society. The findings: harassment in the workplace can come in a variety of forms, with the potential for far-reaching effects on the health and well-being of workers, as well as on their job tenure, job stability, and job satisfaction. Using data from 2016 General Social Survey on Canadians at work and at home, this study also focused on workplace harassment experienced by respondents at some point in 2018. The target population includes those who were aged 15 to 64 and worked for pay in the previous year. Overall, 19% of women and 13% of men reported that they had experienced harassment in their workplace in the past year. Workplace harassment includes verbal abuse, humiliating behavior, threats to persons, physical violence, and unwanted sexual attention or sexual harassment. This survey also found that about 47% of men and 34% of women who had been harassed by a supervisor or manager had a weak sense of belonging to their current organization, compared with 16% of women and men who said that they had not been harassed at work in the past year. This study also noted that the association between workplace harassment and work environment tends to be stronger for women than men. For example, 40% of continuously employed women who rarely or never consider their workload to be manageable reported that they had been harassed in the workplace, compared with 22% of their male counterparts. Similarly, 34% of continuously employed women who reported that they always or often felt that they were competing with their colleagues reported that they had been harassed in the workplace, compared with 19% of their male counterparts. The study also suggests that having a good friend at work seems to be a factor when it comes to workplace harassment among women, which was reported by close to 30% of women who had no friends at work, compared with 16% of men. So as per what we just covered from the 2018 study, why is it important that workplace harassment address both the physical and the psychological effects on the people targeted? Well, from the Canadian Standard on Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace, which was released in January of 2013, here are two examples: civility and respect and psychological protection. Workplace factors that align with the federal harassment and violence legislation and its corresponding regulations. Civility and respect. A civil and respectful workplace is related to greater job satisfaction, greater perceptions of fairness, a more positive attitude, improved morale, better teamwork, greater interest in personal development, engagement in problem resolution, enhanced supervisor-staff relationships, and a reduction in sick leave and turnover. As for psychological protection, a workplace where coworkers and supervisors are supportive of employees' psychological and mental health concerns and respond appropriately as needed. For some organizations, the most important aspect of psychological support may be to help protect against traumatic stressors at work, such as harassment and violence, as well as incivility and disrespect. So why are these important? Well, employees feel that they have psychological support. They have greater job attachment, job commitment, job satisfaction, job involvement, positive work moods, a desire to remain within the organization, organizational citizenship behaviors, which means behaviors of personal choice that benefit the organization as well as job performance. And when these are lacking, employee perceptions of a lack of psychological support from the organization, they can lead to increased absenteeism, withdrawal behaviors, conflict, strain, which can also lead to fatigue, headaches, burnout, anxiety, and turnover. This can also lead to a loss of productivity, increased costs, as well as greater risk of accidents, injuries, and incidents.
Let's look at more broadly now and then more specifically in a few slides about the linkages between healthy workplaces, civility, respect, and overall prevention efforts. To keep with traditional health and safety language, let's discuss how we can have this actioned in our workplaces. Again, from the National Standard on Psychological Health and Safety released in 2013, those workplace factors are known through research to impact on organizational health, the health of the individual employees, and the financial bottom line. This includes the way work is carried out and the context in which work occurs. If we look to improve these factors, we are looking at the whole organization. This will benefit everyone, not just the person potentially facing challenges. Similar to implementing engineering controls, using a hierarchy of control, these factors were determined by thorough review of literature, consultation with employers, unions, employees, and governments. These factors all impact the health of the organization and the health of the individual worker. If we look to improve these, again, we're looking at the whole of the organization in benefit of everyone, and to re-emphasize not just the person with potential issue. Now, more specifically, let's look at how civility and respect are key prevention factors for workplace harassment and violence. Civility and respect can be used as a primary intervention that you can use to change the workplace. Workplaces need to figure out, how do we exceed basic compliance of keeping the workplace functioning and negative interactions, as negative interactions could erode at these efforts if civility and respect is not promoted actively and ongoing. One clear step is by making sure we have a civil and respectful workplace, positive and clear leadership, guidance, plus modeling of that behavior by all levels of leadership as well. A workplace where employees are respectful and considerate in their interactions with one another, as well as with customers, clients, and the public. That characterizes a healthy workplace, in my estimation. Civility and respect are based on showing esteem, care, and consideration for others, as well as acknowledging their dignity. Civility and respect consider how a workplace where they are respectful and considerate in their interactions with one another and the customers and the clients and the public, how showing this esteem and care and consideration is important. Why is it important? It relates to, again, greater job satisfaction, greater perceptions of fairness, a more positive attitude, improved morale, better teamwork. Think about all the things that we've discussed today. The organizations that are characterized by civility and respect create a positive atmosphere, marked by high spirits and work satisfaction. This civility allows people to enjoy the environment, whether they are staff, clients, or customers. What happens when it is lacking? A workplace that lacks civility and respect can lead to emotional exhaustion amongst staff, greater conflicts and job withdrawal. And a work environment that is uncivil and disrespectful also exposes organizations to the threat of more grievances and legal risks. One example of disrespectful behavior is bullying. Exposure to workplace bullying is associated with psychological complaints, depression, burnout, anxiety, aggression, psychosomatic complaints, and musculoskeletal health complaints as well. Bullying not only affects those directly involved, but also affects bystanders, as they too experience higher levels of stress. A number of provinces currently have legislation to address such behaviors.
You'll see on the slide, we discussed self-awareness. And CCHS does not teach anger management as a lagging indicator, but rather we focus on prevention steps and what managers and supervisors can do to help people become more self-aware and self-actualized so they can even self-diffuse situations they may be happening or could happen. Also, it's important to practice reflection when we are in a calm state and not in a state of distress or acting out. consider your own workplace again and think about the questions on the screen and consider how both your employer and your leadership, plus your coworkers and yourself, how you may or may not be from your own experiences and on your observations. Do they have awareness of their behaviors and its impact on others, how they use power and privilege, especially if they are in positions of authority? Do people apologize and modify their behaviors for next time? Do people practice stress management techniques, especially during times of crisis or stress? Does the organization support people in enrolling in educational programs designed to improve interpersonal communication, people management or positive performance, or even anger management? Do people practice patience, give others the benefit of the doubt, and ask questions instead of making assumptions? Do people find that the lines of communication are kept open so issues can be addressed and resolved quickly? Does the organization support them in enrolling in educational programs designed to improve communication? And how does leadership practice patience, give people the benefit of the doubt, ask questions instead of making assumptions? And does leadership also keep those lines of communication open so that issues can be addressed and resolved quickly? At CCHS, we offer some advice around how to practice and use listening skills. And here are some of the points from one of our fact sheets. Ask questions, repeat back for confirmation. One benefit of active listening is that it helps reduce confusion and it gives opportunity for the person to provide clarity or corrections. Another benefit is that it supports people being genuine and sincere, compassionate and empathetic. Active listening is a structured way of listening and responding to others. When actively listening, your attention is focused on the other person in an attempt to understand, interpret, and evaluate what they are telling you. So try to make eye contact. Try to focus on what is being said. Don't do other activities at the same time. If something is not clear, asking for more detail about it in a friendly and a non-judgmental way shows interest and concern. When you say back what you hear, you reduce the chance for misperceptions and confusion. Give the other person a chance to correct any misunderstanding of what you think you heard. And don't do anything else during the conversation. So don't check your phone, don't answer or read emails, or the little bubbles that pop up, hard to avoid. Be a part of the conversation and just that conversation. If you can clear your desk and turn off your computer, if you have to, with this stage set, there is a chance that you are able to have an honest discussion. And be careful about the degree of responsiveness and spontaneity that you use. Both too much and too little can cause problems. An overly buoyant person can intimidate the other person, while a wooden style may be off-putting. However, consistency helps you to be predictable and dependable in your interactions. Predictable means you are consistent. You are not warmly responsive in one moment and then confrontational and detached in the next. So does your workplace give people the time and the space to reflect on what they are doing and what others may be doing? Is active listening encouraged and practiced? What else can your workplace do to mitigate risk or to de-escalate situations? From infographics to fact sheets, podcasts, and online courses for workplace prevention training purposes, CCHS can help you with your harassment and violence prevention program needs. You can visit our website as well as our social media channels to find out more. Okay, now we can take a few moments to review what types of questions we've received from some of you during the registration process, as well as from the chat window. So I know there was a question earlier when I had some mic issues about reporting to the Ministry of Labor. I believe that has been answered through the chat, so thank you very much to the team. But yes, typically we're focusing on a federal process that you would be reporting to the Ministry of Labor when your employer is not doing what they need to do, if your employer is not doing anything, or if they don't have the right policies or procedures in place. We did get some other good questions through the registration process. So one of the questions that came in is, what are the tools we can provide to employees so they can fact check information on group pages? So it's important to stay informed about checking credible sources. There is a lot of information out there, but not all of it is accurate, of course. Always check the facts and use reliable sources of information such as federal, provincial, or territorial government websites, your local government resources, or us at CCHS before sharing information. Employment and Social Development Canada also have published many resources such as the requirements for employers and as well as interpretation policies guidelines on workplace harassment and violence prevention. We have included some links in the chat for your convenience also. Another question that came through is, what do I need to do to cultivate effective communication regarding workplace harassment and violence? Excellent question. The most important component of any prevention program is management commitment to preventing workplace harassment and violence. Employees must understand their role in reporting incidents of workplace harassment and violence, whether they are the principal party or the witness. But management must also support the employee throughout the process. Management should communicate without judgment and maintain confidentiality at all times. Reassure all employees that they should come forward without fear or embarrassment or reprisal, and ensure that those who receive these reports are competent to do so effectively. Fostering an environment where employees trust their leaders and feel supported will improve open communication in the workplace. Seeing another question that came through, how can we prevent workplace harassment and violence? Well, like any other workplace hazard, we can prevent workplace harassment and violence by identifying the risk factors, both internal and external to the workplace, that contribute to harassment and violence. Once the employer and applicable partner jointly identify the risk factors, they must jointly develop and implement preventive measures to mitigate the risk. Preventive measures may include workplace design and layout, policies, as well as training. It is also important to monitor the accuracy of the workplace assessment and, if necessary, to update it in order to reflect a change to the information, such as if there were a change in risk factors or a change in the compromises the effectiveness of a preventive measure.
Oh, we have one that just came through in the chat. What behaviors will you see in a best of breed company that is a model of civility and respect? So I'll start it off. Sonia, if you want to chime in right after. I had the good fortune to have some of those slides in today's presentation to touch upon, and it was things like high morale, a good spirit of wanting to be engaged and at work, that there's usually some correlation. Many studies, I'm sure, have been done about productivity relating to positivity and a sense of purpose and meaning in the workplace. And that comes through these interpersonal interactions that are civil, respectful, and considering each other's dignity, as the human rights slides had touched upon. Was there anything else around that, Sonia?
No, I think you've covered it, Sue. The only other thing is that I can share what civil and respectful behavior means to me. And sometimes it's those pleases and thank yous. And if somebody says good morning, responding with a good morning, that's sort of behavior you might see on a day-to-day basis. Emails that are very respectful, communication, saying good morning, Sue, how you doing? And then getting into the body of the message. Those are just a couple of things. Even like I want to include in that an element of self-respectful behavior. So making sure that you show up for your day, with a sense of caring, maybe about the way you're brushing your hair, or if you show up disheveled and like straight out of bed, there's an element that kind of says that maybe you don't respect yourself as much. Just other things, opening doors for people, just whatever that civil and respectful behavior, kind of the manners that we may have learned, that sort of behavior is what you might see.
And I just had one come to mind is the inclusion of people in important work conversations, that we can make sure that we're copying people, that we're inviting them to critical meetings or discussions,
Mhm.
and seeing them in the sense of equity in situations where their presence and their contribution is important. I've seen things from the Ottawa public health folks that put out some amazing videos about the workplace factors, and we can maybe even include that post event in some information. They really touch upon it through some. They're mostly animated case studies, but it
Mhm.
illuminates more of what we're talking about today, the
Mhm.
interactions.
Absolutely. Treating each other, remembering that everyone has dignity and treating each other with respect like that, human dignity. Yes, thank you, Sue.
And Sonia, we have one through the question and answer window from Laurel is asking, is there research to show what behaviors tend to attract harassment and bullying? Well, I've heard of escalation factors being researched, and that for sure we can pull some information together. We have Ryan Mars that has been helping us today from our inquiry service, and we can look into that for you. But I just know anecdotally, I have seen research about the escalation from unchecked civility and respect. It's like a set of stairs all the way up to the most extreme types of violence and harassment one could
Mhm.
consider in society in terms of loss of life. So there's many steps in between though that are all prevention opportunities along that journey. Really appreciate the engagement today. It really is about uh, how we could be helpful. So to that, I was going to thank folks for their participation and giving us their time and attention today. As and your parting words as well, Sonia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for joining us.